read I am that. So exciting. And you're all, whoop, wrong button. That's not what I meant to do. I was. So I
Is the
linked.
echo?
Hmm?
Wait, I think the reason is there's an echo coming from your screen share.
Is it? Y'all can um mute the screen share, but I can also see if I can fix it. Uh, it seems improbable to me the echo's coming from my screen share because it shouldn't be sharing any audio.
It was, because I muted it and it's
It
done.
definitely is.
That's so weird. It shouldn't be sharing any audio because I'm not even sharing a browser that has. Anyway, that's just weird. I wonder if a setting changed with Discord.
That would be my guess, because there have been a bunch of Discord updates.
Yeah. I did link 2 versions of this book for people to review. Fortunately, it's old enough; it is free online. There was the one from the Bliss Center and the advaita.com. .br. I chose the second one to read myself thoroughly. As Lee and I discussed before we started, I found it more visually appealing to look at. And pretty much for no other reason.
Yeah.
This book comes in parts, and is the spoken wisdom of a teacher named Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, whose name is difficult to say for Des. Here's part 1. It's called The Sense of I Am.
You got it pretty close, though.
Huh? Oh, thank you.
You got the name almost right.
Ha! I'm winning. I'm learning. Yay.
Winning.
So I actually really enjoyed the writings. I felt like they were very forward, very concise, but very true in many places. I echoed with a lot of the teachings and actually sat back and reflected on a couple of them, so that was cool. Here at the beginning, he says, kind of defines what I am is, and that is this first thing that emerges in us. And so that when our mind stays in the I am without moving, you enter a state which cannot be verbalized but can be experienced. But I don't know. I found it really interesting. And then he talks about how trying to add all these labels makes things misleading. And I felt like that was true sometimes. Yeah. And then I highlighted this bit that I thought was kind of neat from part 1. It says, the very act of perceiving shows that you are not what you perceive. And that was interesting because he circles back kind of on this concept, I feel like, maybe in a way later when he really discusses not being separate from what is perceived. Please feel free to stop me at any moment, guys, if you want to say anything. Or
I didn't finish.
Up in here. I'm walking the dog though, so I'm a little distracted.
No worries.
But the comment about you are not that which is seen, you are the seer.
Mm-hmm.
This is very important to Vedanta, I believe, is what they're following. In which the I am, the indescribable full experiencing, is also called sometimes the witness.
Yes.
And, the eye can see everything but itself. So if you try and find yourself and it's not there, you might think, oh, I'm doing it wrong. But no, you are the one that is looking. You are not that which is seen. just like a knife can't cut itself.
Right.
Anyway, I'm remembering some of the stuff that I learned about this a few years ago, just from what you've said.
Perfect. Digging out
Good
those
times.
old file boxes from the memory folder.
Right, right. Let me brush the dust off of this one.
Yeah, this book was chosen partly. I think someone recommended it, or did I find it on my own? I don't remember. But it got into the voting choices because I was attempting to branch out because we study a lot of Mahayana in the book club. So trying to branch out a little bit. Did we achieve that? I don't know. Part 2. So we're doing this in parts. I thought it would be easy to do parts 1 through 10 because they're actually really short parts. I don't feel like it was a lot of reading. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. It wasn't too much reading. I just was taking like twice as long as usual
That's
to
okay.
read things today. But
Yeah, you were like under the weather or something.
yeah, yesterday I was feeling kind of weird, and so I didn't really read. And then today I did. But anyway,
Yeah.
I like this part. This section, number 2, is real interesting to me. I said that green part that you highlighted there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit funny. This section. I don't think it was supposed to be I don't think it was meant to be funny. But it struck me as funny anyway. Maybe it's just the way that it's worded, but and from just the entire thing, honestly. But yeah, your opinion's your opinion only. At any moment, you may change it.
Yeah.
Like, why do I care? I don't care.
Well, that's how it starts out. Questioner. Your words are wise. Your behavior noble. Your grace all powerful. And he's just like, I know nothing about it all. I see no difference between you and me. Only I'm detached and see the passing show as a passing show. And so it is interesting, this back and forth. One of the things I was thinking about, it's interesting how many writings we come across that has this conversational flow to it, where they're like, the person asks the question, person responds, which makes sense. We've discussed it before, and Max had some good insight the one time it came up when we were discussing, I think, the format of the Bhagavad Gita, and that I think it's easier to remember and tell down orally and stuff.
It's way easier to remember a conversation than it is to remember facts. Mm-hmm. Especially if the conversation has, like, you know, interplay, personalities, whatever. There's more you can sort of key your memory onto with that. Mm-hmm. But furthermore, the dialectical, the speaking style of teaching has just been the way they do it for, I mean, all of the Brahmanic religions, like Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, all those guys over there. This is how it's done. The Greek philosophers tried to take a page out of that book too, and I think they did all right. But really, these are the OGs here.
The OGs.
Wait, did I misunderstand too? I thought in a different version they said something like, it's just somebody else writing down like what they heard him say. So these are like questions that other people in the room asked, and then he said this and they recorded it and transcribed it. Was that not right?
That's my understanding?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. It's just conversations that happened, or people are like, that's a good little nugget. I'm gonna write that down.
And then and some of them happened like at completely different times as well. So they're just like sort of disjointed and then collected into these different topics. And
yes, I believe that's how this is compiled. The first little part, I liked that it is this idea of I am and I'm the perceiver, and then we get into the two. To summarize, it is like there is a tendency to define ourselves, but these only really apply to the body, which this is titled obsession with the body, which makes sense. And then we get into 3, which is the living present. I only highlighted, I'm real for I am always now, in the presence, and what is with me now shares in my reality. And I believe he and the questioner go back and forth a little, coming up soon about, about definitions of these things. It's a lot of back and forth, which makes sense. And then it's like, desire is the memory of pleasure and fear is the memory of pain. You get some deep little one-liners like that. I like a good one-liner myself. I'm very pleased with those. It's easier for me to think about.
We grew up on anime. We all like one-liners.
That's true. I am an anime nerd. My heart of hearts.
Okay, I'm at my computer, so I'm going to be able to pay more attention now.
Part 4. Real world is beyond the mind. To speak of one thing being the only cause of another thing is altogether wrong. Yet, in actual life, we invariably initiate action with a view to a result. This sentence was a little gibberishy.
There we go.
So, I think, focus too much on cause and effect is how I interpreted that little part. And that too often we are focused more on our end goals and not enough on the journey and participating in the present, I think, and what is the reality of the situation.
I think he was saying, yes, people focus too much on cause and effect because in reality, every single little thing was the cause of any given effect. So it's like a misconception that we sort of independently bring forth any result, because in reality, everything had to be just so for your action to contribute to create that effect. And so if you recognize the truth, which is that everything is acting together to create any given result, then you can see that your part in it is quite small and therefore use less energy to accomplish things and feel also maybe less burden for things that happen because you are a very small part in making it happen rather than the sole cause.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The mind really does like to be like, I can figure it out. Here's what caused it.
I can do it. Look at my pattern recognition skills. Let's go.
I could probably change it myself if I wanted to, but the brain doesn't realize, why am I thinking this thought? What caused me to think this?
Right. But this source is not a cause, and no cause is a source. Right.
Yep.
There's actually one good one-liner there, too. He says that would people know that nothing can happen unless the entire universe makes it happen, they would achieve much more with less expenditure of energy.
Yeah. Yes. What is born must die, part 5. To my top one-liner in this section. To remember what needs to be remembered is the secret of success. You come to it through earnestness. And I actually had to reflect on this. So as a person with lots of anxiety and lots of little tasks I'm constantly doing, I have a running list going on constantly. Things I got to do, things I need to do for my classroom, things I need to do for work, blah, 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 blah. And so when he says to remember what needs to be remembered is the secret of success, I don't think he means any of those things. in my checklists, right? Of, I should probably do the dishes soon before the sink overflows. I don't know if that's necessarily what he's thinking about, but it did strike me as a moment to remember some of the teachings we do study here in book club, which I really enjoy, and how I think if I let myself breathe more, I would have more room for those things in my mind, and perhaps the other things wouldn't feel so heavy if they were the only things taking up all the space in my head.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that was a little convoluted, but
I mean, the whole thing with this book, with all of the books, this whole club is, oh no, you know, trying to integrate these teachings, the wisdom inside of them, and applying it to our lives and with each other. So, we've already read a few times that the whole what is in the mind is in the mind only, and like the weight of things is the weight you put on them,
mm-hmm.
kind of a thing. So if you're having this chore or activity or fear or upcoming whatever, have uh, not even just importance, but like I said, weight in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to affect you and it's going to prevent other things from taking up that sort of cognitive space, you know? So if you
Yeah.
learn to just be like, this weighs like a feather, and I will give it a little attention right when it needs it and no other time,
Right.
then you've got the rest of the mind open and free and ready to go. But that's not what we're taught to do.
Yeah.
So
No, I must grasp it with all fingers in an iron fist so that it may not
Right.
slip away. For
Right,
if I
and then it
forget,
does,
the
and you're like,
world ends.
I am the linchpin of all reality.
I am the linchpin of all reality.
Mhm. I mean, if you break it down, that's what it ultimately ends up meaning. It's just like, if I don't fucking freak out, shit's gonna unravel and it'll be my fault.
I guess. Yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah. I think there's a certain amount of like when I'm being less kind to myself, like I'm not practicing that compassion for myself. There's a frustration there of how many books am I gonna read before I figure out that how to do this thing that every single book we read, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I should do that.
I think that was a really great point and true, but I read this a little bit differently.
Okay, yeah, I would
Like,
love to hear a different interpretation.
I thought he was saying more of in the sense of like, remember what's important. Like, if you, like, the thing that needs to be remembered isn't like the little things that are, or maybe too many things that are cluttering your, I mean, still there would be too many things cluttering your mind, but here I took it as like what needs to be remembered that will help you be successful is everything a little further down, like keeping that consistency of what is the truth, right? Like what is reality, and having that whole my words aren't coming to me today. But sort of like a cohesive, like that consistency that everything is the same and that you have the passion, like he keeps saying earnestness here, but the goal and the way must not be on different levels. If you're thinking of the things that you do, like everything that you do and your intentions and what you're trying to accomplish, everything should be consistent and not contradictory. And that if you keep in mind the kind of, I guess, the higher goals, like not getting lost in the little details of things, but focusing on that.
I would say I don't inherently think that our two interpretations are contradictory. To me, they seem very what's the word? Not symbiotic.
Yeah, they're not contradictory. Also, I kind of like, as I was talking, went, "Oh, this can be connected," and kind of did.
Like, to me, they're very connected and very similar thoughts. Like, I don't see an inherent contradiction, and so I appreciate your interpretation as a different viewpoint, but I'm not inherently like, oh, I was wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong.
You
As
don't
I
feel that
started
way.
with, like, I think it's completely right, and also definitely a thing we should do is to not like obsess or focus too much on all these random other things cluttering our minds all the time.
Oh, these are two sides of the same coin. That's what's happening right now.
Yes, yes.
That's what this is.
Look at you.
So
You and
I think
actually
what
knowing
he's-
phrases in shoes.
Sometimes. I just started drinking coffee. That's my only excuse.
For Max
I
has
think
now
what he's-
seen God.
Right. What he's pointing at here, I think, is about the practice of what he's espousing, right? It's not simply remember what needs to be remembered in terms of like, oh, I have to do the chores, but like remembering to not get caught up with the ego, right? Remembering to stay present-minded. Things like that through earnestness, so you don't get caught up if, like, someone says something that you find offensive or triggers you with some conditional behavioral pattern. Like,
Or that
you
thing that you did when you were 12.
Right, exactly. You remember exactly where you are. That's the secret, is not just have a good memory. It's just essentially abandon everything else. It's not remember more, it's remember what matters. And with that, yeah, it goes on to the behaviorness must not betray belief, goal and the way must not be on different levels. That way, if it's all in the same thing, if it's all consolidated, you have a wholeness of purpose. Call it honesty, integrity, wholeness, whatever. So, by maintaining this consolidated and integrated view, you don't waste time on the little bullshit, but you also don't get confused about the old patterns and conditionings, because you're shedding that. You're just going forward, metaphorically. I think that's what he's getting at here, although it doesn't seem to be... Is this all one conversation broken up into different bits, or are they different parts of conversations?
Unclear.
No,
I think the ones when there's like a gap are just a separate occurrence.
That they
Right?
thought, related
they're
enough for
grouped
the
by
part.
topic,
Yeah.
but
The
they're
group-
just like questions that like different questioners asked him during various conversations.
I see.
But you
Okay.
see how there's like
Yeah,
an
there's a little.
additional line?
Yeah, there's
like
like a
there's
little
a
gap
gap.
right here.
Yeah, I think that's like a
Oh.
separate time. In some of the sections, there's multiple gaps, and it's just like random random
You see that
sentences that he
here.
said. And some of them, it's a
Okay.
continuing conversation where they go back and forth. Like, well, but surely you must see it this way. And he's like, no, I don't.
Yeah, there's little chunks and gaps. When they're smooshed together, we think it might. Yeah, I think it's one conversation. But then, yeah, like
makes sense.
Lee said, if there's a little jump, it's probably a separate thought that occurred.
Okay.
Like, maybe even on a completely different day. I don't know.
Yeah, could have been different day, different week.
this is a
It could have
lot.
been different
This is-
years, as far as I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it 142 pages of random sentences,
All right, meditation. I love meditation. I should do it more. Whatever vice or weakness in ourselves we discover and understand its causes and its workings, we overcome it by the very knowing. The unconscious dissolves when brought into the conscious. I highlighted this because to me it was an interesting thought. And I have to tell you, and this is going to seem so unrelated, it was because I was listening to a podcast yesterday about how hauntings might work. Hauntings and
I
ghosts.
love this connection. Please continue.
So idea that we feed our own paranormal and our own, like, hoopla, right? So there's this running theory in the paranormal community that one of the reasons that hauntings happens at all is because we are sentient creatures who can kind of, like, trick ourselves into all sorts of shenanigans. And so then...
Prevalent scientific theory.
Yes. So, no. It's even more than that. Like, we imbue objects around us with our own psychic, like,
no.
like, craziness. It's a fascinating theory. It's really interesting. But anyway, the connection I have here is that oftentimes we, I think, take parts of ourselves or parts of our belief system as just like, this is it. This is it. Until we bring it into the realm of consciousness and have to actually investigate it.
Yeah, it's pretty much shadow work again, in my opinion.
Yeah, shadow work, like Ben talks about sometimes in the server, and you and Austin, I think, also. I'm having a hard time remembering.
Not sure if it's Austin who spoke.
Yeah, someone else also talks about shadow work quite a bit. And so there's this. Anyway, that's just what I was thinking about when I highlighted that. I was connecting it to this, like, little hobby research session.
So, this is something I noticed that when I had it explained to me, or at least when I read about it, on the surface it didn't seem true. It didn't seem intuitive at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Because, at least if I'm understanding correctly, what this is pointing out is if you meditate and you notice an attachment or a pattern. I keep using the Buddhist linguistics. You know what I mean.
Yes.
If you notice a pattern, typically we would then think, okay, I have to work to undo this pattern, to decouple the conditioned response from the conditioned start or whatever. And what this is saying is, no, you don't. You just find the behavior. You notice the thing. You
just drag it into the light.
Right. Stop letting it hide.
Ah,
be
yeah.
mindful. Be mindful, be aware of it, accept that this is true, that this is what in fact is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you need to do. And then it'll change on its own because you're aware of it now.
That's a much more simple interpretation. I like that.
The difference between not being aware and aware is the change you need. And I mean, at least I was convinced that no, I have to see it first and then I have to do something with it. No. Just see it. Just see it and keep seeing it. That's the thing. Because it's going to try and crawl back into the shadows, right? Just maintain your awareness of that thing and it will change in the light. But it sounds like weird. Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
If someone were to say that to me and I hadn't personally gone through that experience, I'd just be like, you sound very much like a hippie right now.
Yeah.
I think that's not really too different. Actually, it's like this maybe it's like two sides again, but if you see the thing happening and then it happens again, you see it again, and eventually that's a kind of mindfulness, right? If we're bringing this back into the language we've been using with the
Right.
Buddhist rhetoric. So you have mindfulness, you can see what's happening, and for pretty much any like emotional state or thought that you would have, if you're noticing it happening, that you're sort of one layer removed from it at that point, and eventually it stops. It kind of does just stop happening on its own, because if you're aware and you get faster and faster, eventually you get fast enough at recognizing it that it doesn't actually come out of your mouth.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just like cognitive
it's
behavioral
like
therapy.
Yeah, it's just a really short, like it's a brief and highly summarized way of saying that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It is the same actually as the majority of the, I mean, not as all of them, but the majority of the philosophies that say see the thing, find the pattern, and then do something about it.
Yeah.
The thing you're supposed to do about it is just learn to recognize it faster and stop doing it. Usually, right?
Yeah.
So they are kind of the same. They just have like a little bit different idea about.
My struggle with it, with the whole do something about it aspect, is that my understanding of the doing was a very active process, and I found that this awareness building was more of a passive process, in that I did have to put effort in. It was still a thing that I was doing, but it wasn't something that I was like directly involved with. It was more of an open, aware, you know, just let it come in kind of a situation. It's a receptive state, which is not what I would have normally associated with an active state.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. That's interesting because, and obviously we all have different experiences with it, but for me, the thing that I'm actively doing is just asking questions, like remembering, having a trigger to remember to check if I'm doing the thing once I've noticed the thing, or to say, like, what is happening right now? Why is this happening? What am I feeling? What is my body doing? You know, just going through kind of a process, like reminders are the active, going through
I
this
see.
sort of bulleted list of all of these different things is usually like that's the bulk of the active part of, for me.
That makes sense.
I mean,
Yeah, that
sometimes
I would.
there's other things, but I guess that's why for me this sounds like sort of a, it's not the same, but when it boils down to the same thing, and maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's
No,
not.
no, no, no. We're talking about the exact same thing, just at different parts of the process.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I guess the difference is that when you say actively doing something, and maybe what were the things, I guess that's what I'm kind of curious, is what were the initial things that were the active parts of the process that eventually you were like, those aren't necessary, and
Well, that's
ultimately
the
get to
thing.
this.
I couldn't identify any, which is why I was confused by the statement at the start.
Mm.
So, like with other problems, like, uh, I have to put the speaker on a wall. Well, first I identify that's the problem, and then I have to actively make that not the problem anymore, right? But with mindfulness, or with simply becoming aware of something I wasn't aware of, that awareness happens on its own, and then I have to remember to be aware of it again. But my memory is such that I can't do much with it. So it's like it's happening every time. I become aware of it again, and I become aware quicker because I was aware of it once before. That that recognition has become stronger now, but I don't feel like I'm the one doing it, if that makes sense. It's more of a
Yes.
more of a passive coming of, right, this is happening again. But I'm
Right.
not remembering to check that. It's just being made aware to me.
Yeah, just noticing.
Right.
It's just noticing.
But to have an intentional path of, I have recognized this thing, I want to not have this be what happens anymore, if it's like a personal behavior, or something like that, um, then yes, that's a much more active process rather than simply a, oh, it's this thing again, you know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Good job. Go team. Cool. Part 7, the mind. I'm gonna read just this first little statement he makes because I think it is a good job of being a good chunk of the idea here in part 7 of these different sayings. In pure being, consciousness arises. In consciousness, the world appears and disappears. All there is me, and there is mine. Before all beginnings, after all endings, I am. All has its being in me, in the I am that shines in every living being. Even not being is unthinkable without me. Whatever happens, I must be there to witness it.
I love this personified view of essentially metaphysical reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because philosophically, that is spot on accurate. Spiritually, oh, I dig it. I love it. It's beautiful. And even scientifically, not being is unthinkable without me. Well, what does it mean to not exist? If
Yeah.
nothing exists, it has no meaning now. It only exists through existence. It's good stuff, I guess, is what I'm saying.
For me, number 7 really gets into the title of the book of I Am That quite a bit. Just as a mental exercise, right? As we start to think about being a part of or being all of it. Which is funny for me when I was rereading it because I had a similar awakening that got me out of the Christian church. So this similar vein of thought is actually what was my first stepping stone, I guess. So it's interesting to come back to it. I like where he says, the world lasts but for a moment. I see the world as it is, a momentary appearance in consciousness. In the vein of thoughts that believe that each of us is the universe attempting to witness itself or like interact with itself out of loneliness is I don't know, some parallel here.
I'm trying to figure out still, like, I'm not sure. So comparing it, sometimes it doesn't seem contradictory. I just feel like I don't quite understand the stance. So, and this is the last section that I read.
Okay.
For today, so I don't know if there's more detail about related commentary later.
Mm-hmm.
But I keep going back and forth between the recognition that what I perceive in the the world that I witness, the world in my mind, like he says, oh, my world is like this and your world is like that. The recognition that there are different perceptions and that's all, what you perceive is reality. Okay, get it. But then there's other parts.
Yeah.
Oh, and this whole like, oh, well, I perceive it, therefore it's not me. But then also the non-duality, everything is me, but I'm getting the sense like it's not in the same way as other texts that we were reading. Like this isn't the Thich Nhat Hanh, the clouds are made of water that grows different things that then become my body. Like literally everything is the same thing, and there's something in all, like all of us are the same thing. We are the world, we are the universe, because we're literally made of the same stuff and we couldn't exist without it. And
I think it's a step further of like there's nothing like, separate to be perceived. Like,
but then he's saying everything that you perceive isn't you, but that also the world you perceive is you. It's a different thing.
By perceiving, you are attempting to create a separation between yourself and that which you are perceiving. But I think his argument is that in his world, there is no difference because he has reached a point of not seeing a line between himself and all other things. Is my tentative.
The little paragraph that starts with, "Oh no, I live in a world of realities, while yours is of imagination. Your world is personal, private, unshareable, intimately your own. Nobody can enter it.
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah. In your world, you're truly alone, enclosed in your ever-changing dream. My world is open, common to all, accessible to all. In my world, there's community, insight, love, real quality. The individual is the total, the totality. In the individual, all are one, and one is all." I think that's where he's kind of trying to highlight that interconnectedness a little bit.
Yeah, but then that's different from like in the was it the first and the second section, like part 1 and 2, where he's saying comments like anything that you perceive is not you. Like I am not thing. Like you cannot perceive yourself.
I think that that's a trick of
Like two different
almost,
selves?
and that like anything you perceive because you shouldn't. Oh gosh.
So like section 1 is talking about that sense of like that thing that defines initially our sense of like who we are, and this is kind of trying to like maybe broaden that scope a little bit to move away from like a kind of more shallow self-identification to a more interconnected and broad identification of.
My connection from that section to this first section, like you were saying, is this sentence. You need not get at it, for you are it. It will get at you if you give it a chance. Let go of your attachment to the unreal, and the real will swiftly and smoothly step into its own.
The comparison with "you are not that which you see" is speaking on appearances rather than beingness. And when it's talking about "I am that, I am the world, everything is me," that's talking about beingness rather than appearance. But the language used doesn't necessarily make that big of a clear distinction between the two. But it's yeah, he's got a, it's not a contradictory view, it's just I can understand the difficulty in
It's like there's overlap with the terms, and they aren't
right.
defined very clearly. And I think part of that is the kind of aggregated format.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. It's not like he actually wrote this and is explaining it. It's just like disjointed fragments, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. What is he actually saying here?
Here, I think he is saying he is reality itself, and this reality takes on many different appearances. It has many different pairs of or sets of clothing it could wear and appears all of these different faces, but none of those are real. That's just what you see.
Yes. I think that's a good
Real
way of putting it,
reality
Max.
is me, but that's all of it. That's the whole thing is reality.
Like
You're just
kind of
looking at
underneath.
right.
Yeah.
Don't get distracted by the dance. Look at the dancer, kind of a thing.
And was Ben gonna say something?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, I thought I heard you for a second there.
No, I'm good.
Yes, I appear to hear and see and talk and act, but to me, it just happens. As to you, digestion or perspiration happens.
So this is kind of what I was getting at, with the awareness just happens, right? I also I talk and it just happens for me. Like it's been like that since I was 16. I remember when that changed. It doesn't feel like an active thing anymore, any of it. But it's it's weird to think of it like that.
Yeah. Interesting section. Number 8. The self stands beyond mind.
I love the way you emphasize these.
This reminds me how this week I was talking to my students and I was giving like my intro lecture for my classes because I try to I do like an intro and then we have some free draw time, so it's not just like me lecturing for 40 minutes. And one of the kids was like, "Miss West, you talk really fast." I was like, "Hi, welcome to art class. We're going to talk about," and I was like, "Is that better?" And they're like, "No." Anyway, I think it's more fun, is, I guess, the summary of that anecdote.
Yeah.
And so, the self stands beyond mind. Starts out with, how can an unsteady mind make itself steady? Of course it cannot. It is the nature of the mind to roam about. All you can do is to shift the focus of consciousness beyond the mind. Ask ourselves some questions. Can I avoid this protracted battle with my mind? Yes.
Oh, God.
Yes, you can. Just live your life as it comes. Yet I want happiness. True happiness cannot be found in things that change and pass away. Pleasure and pain alternate inexorably. Inexorably. And then I highlighted the sentence, pain is the background of all your pleasures. You want them because you suffer. And I really liked that sentence. Put that on a t-shirt.
That's a really baller line they should have in an anime somewhere.
Doesn't it feel like a villain line? Yeah, I was just about to say, doesn't it feel like a villain line? I just feel like it's so good. But it's true. Like, it's not untrue. It is definitely a villain line.
Yeah, they're true, and they've just done something that they shouldn't have with their slightly flawed understanding of the truth.
I need it on a pink hoodie with Kirby.
Oh, wow.
Just for the juxtaposition. I feel like that'd be excellent.
I could see like a Bleach villain like Aizen or somebody saying something like this.
You want them because you suffer. I have no other thoughts. I just really wanted to highlight that for you guys, is how much I loved that sentence when I read it. Just
yell whenever we read a quote from the book. We just have to shout it.
I'd say my husband would be concerned, but that wouldn't be the only screaming I tend to do in my office because I get excited. I'm just like, what about that thing? Get it! I'm a very excitable person, as it turns out sometimes. Part 9 is tiny. As you can see, it's the responses of memory. Take it to be a dream and be done with it. I thought that was very concise, very succinct. I enjoyed that line. It was good. And then he talks about how, sort of like what Lee was talking about in some of the teachings in Thich Nhat Hanh, where it's like parts of everything are in us once we've eaten them, or just basically being built from them, right? And then he's like, I have eaten up the world and I need not think of it anymore. So he goes from this step to this other step where he's like, I think, re-emphasizing the being of everything. So this is also a good line I would like on a t-shirt. Yes. This is a t-shirt line for sure. I have eaten up the world and I need not think of it anymore. So, love it. It's good. 10. 10 is not too big. And what do I discover? You discover that there is nothing to discover. You are what you are, and that is all. Very Dr. Seuss on that one. If you trust me, believe me when I say. Gets a little pop lyric-y for me in that second bit. And then you must watch yourself continuously, particularly your mind, moment by moment, missing nothing. The witnessing! Is it not my real nature? For witnessing, there must be something else to witness. We are still in duality! You failed!
Wow.
F! And I think,
Thanks.
Lee, for what you were saying earlier and how you hadn't made it past 7, I think 10 would have kind of helped a little bit with that question you posed. At least in my mind it does. I'm sorry if it doesn't actually help.
Well, it does potentially, but unfortunately, this line is actually written quite ambiguously, so you could get either reading out of it.
This is true. That's what I like about the teachings. I like the mystery. I like the...
They discover all that you are not.
Yeah.
And then we are still in duality could be like saying your mindset is still in duality, but it could also be saying literally we are in duality after all.
Both.
So, like, is he correcting the person and reminding them that this is a dual way of thinking, or is
I think
he reasserting?
no.
I feel like everything else that we have read so far does not support that second interpretation.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I think he's
Saying
like
that
smacking him upside the head
actual
like,
wording.
you idiot! I just explained this.
Yeah.
So that's parts 1 through 10.
Nice.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like there's like good stuff in here, but the format
Format is not
like, pushes
amazing.
against like cohesive understanding a little bit.
Oh, I meant to check with Ben a bit more. Ben read the other version of this. Ben, do you feel like there was a drastic difference in the translations?
From what I've seen, it seems the translation is actually the same.
Oh, good. So it's just the format that's different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
At least if the few, I saw a couple sentences that I remembered from the other book, from the other version, just as well, just
Okay.
in the same way.
So even if they're translated a little differently, you didn't feel like there was a big dissonance between these two? Perfect.